million are injured. One of the most dangerous things you can do in America today is show up for work.
The fire is still burning out of control.
Fires and explosions are continuing.
100 more may be trapped inside a building.
A massive rescue effort has been underway.
They've discovered 2 bodies and they're looking for the 3rd.
I can't believe that, people in charge can let this go.
They're not concerned about the safety of the workers. They're concerned about maximizing profit, and the devil may care.
There is 1 line of oxygen to the men that are trapped down there. No one knows if they're dead or alive.
This massive rescue effort has turned up bad news. The 3 workers have been found dead.
These accidents are just going to keep happening again and again and again.
Ambulances, fire trucks, life flight helicopters, and police converge on the channel. Emergency rooms are filling up.
We know the cheapest thing inside these plants is the labor force. The easiest thing to replace is the man out there working.
The deadliest occupation in America, by far, is commercial fishing. Off the coast of Alaska alone, nearly a boat a week goes down. In March of 1990, the Arctic Alaska Company's factory trawler, Aleutian Enterprise, with a crew of 31, was heading into Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The boat was loaded with fish after a very successful catch. She never made it to port.
About 7 in the morning is when we really started getting to the point where we knew we were full. We heard the net go back out. I think everyone looked at it, everyone, just wondering, we thought we had enough on board to do our freezers. I guess the skipper didn't feel the same way.
The captain had the crew pull in another 80,000 pounds of fish, even though he knew the ship's freezers were almost full.
He was a new skipper. He wanted to prove to everyone that he could do as good as anyone else. He wanted to have the top boat.
As the net was being hauled in, it broke, dumping tons of fish onto the deck. Within seconds, the Aleutian was in serious trouble.
A buddy of mine across the table from me hollered out all of us to look back at the overboard chute where we threw out all the garbage and stuff, and it was underneath the water, so it was shooting in water at a pretty good pace. I mean, I'd say 4 times as fast as a fire hydrant can do it.
Water actually started coming in over the rail, and the fish started coming back in the boat. And at that point, I told the guys around me, I said, hey, take off your rain gear, this is it.
Boxes were everywhere. She had a little 4-foot by 3-foot little place to crawl through. The galley stairs were closed. The boat was like this.
When you come up the stairs, you can look back on the back deck where the net's at. And I looked back, and the back of the boat was actually, the corner of it was underneath the water. And I still didn't think, I didn't think it could be happening on a day like that. It was sunny, it was calm, it was our last day.
I knew the boat was going down at that point. It was just listing too bad. It was almost on its side.
Tim Thompson ran by me, and he was sleeping at the time, and he woke up, and he had his underwear on, ran right past me, right to the back of the boat, and dove off head first. And everyone started screaming, throw him a life ring, throw him a life ring. Well, that's when I started thinking, he's been up here fishing for a long, long time. I mean, he knows to get off the boat if it's going down.
I came up out of that water so fast. It just was unbelievable. I got up there, and then all I seen was just people jumping left and right.
And the whole time I just knew people were dying because the people I could see that were out wasn't near as many as I knew as what there should be.
There was noises you wouldn't believe. The boat was making noises now. The water coming into the boat was just loud. The boat was constantly doing that, louder, louder. The wake was starting to roll. I was probably 8 feet away from the boat, the side of the boat. I'm trying to swim away from it. All you hear is that water rushing like a waterfall.
I've always heard you live about 25 minutes in the water, and I figured that was probably a couple minutes already used up. And then that's when I started thinking nothing was gonna help us. I mean, none of us had survival suits on. I didn't have a chance in the world.
The 142-foot-long Aleutian Enterprise sank in 10 minutes in a calm sea. 9 men never made it to the life rafts.
Yeah, that's all.
That's all right. Everybody getting a rest?
No one really had an idea who made it and who didn't make it. And to sit there and think the guy you were working with 15 minutes earlier might still be on the boat, and to think what it would have been like to go down with it, that was probably the worst part. Thinking about the people that were stuck on board, the people that you knew that were sleeping that never got woken up.
Captain Rainey Roussel led the Coast Guard investigation into the sinking.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Aleutian Enterprise capsized in the Bering Sea on 22 March 1990 with a loss of 9 lives. The Commandant of the Coast Guard convened a Marine Board of Investigation to look into the circumstances surrounding that casualty. The fishing net failed while being hauled on board the Aleutian Enterprise, releasing a large volume of fish on deck, resulting in rapid progressive flooding and subsequent capsizing of the Aleutian Enterprise. The vessel sank in about 10 minutes in approximately 400 feet of water. The board concluded that failure to train the crew in donning survival suits and an abandoning ship contributed to the loss of life.
The report uses the word primitive working conditions. Could you describe what you mean by that?
Well, you work 20 hours a day, every day. You fear leaving your station because you'll work 21 or you work more time. There's no heat in the space you're working in. The only motivation is money. They constitute primitive, in my opinion, and maybe there's a better word for it.
You work 16 hours a fucking day, 7 days a week, with overtime, usually 18 hours. You get a 10-minute lunch every 8 hours, no breaks, no nothing. You just work, work, work. You don't stop. It's worse than prison as hell.
There was times when the foreman or the skipper wasn't happy with what we got done that day after 16 hours, and they would come down and say, well, we got overtime. It's as forced as you can be. If you don't do it, you're fired. If you're working slow, you're going to get yelled at, and I've seen other stuff happen besides yelling.
A lot of times the live tank would get filled up with fish. It would get so full that the fish would get all jammed up in there and they couldn't come out of the chutes. And so we'd have to send someone in there to get their body in there and kick out a hole and let the fish come out. And a lot of times someone who was working slow or slacking, they'd get him in there for punishment, send him in there to crawl back and kick the fish out. And it's really one of the nightmare jobs. Once you get in there, they shut all the doors on you, so it's completely black. And then you got to crawl on your back to get to the front of the live tank, and then you got to try and wiggle your body in through the fish to get your feet down to where you can kick some fish in. And there's a lot of different scary fish in this live tank, you know, that are usually still alive in there. And when it's dark out and you feel these things wiggling and crawling on you and you don't know what it is, it can get pretty scary. Especially, you know, when you can see some of these wolfeels that come out of there with heads like this big and teeth real big. It gets real scary.
They do things that are really on the margin a lot. I mean, these are the people that run some of these vessels. They take chances that you and I would never consider taking. But it becomes a norm, you know, a practice with them. And they do it and survive. And they make money. And there's a high there. So they don't want anybody interrupting that high. Not the bureaucracy, not the Coast Guard, not OSHA.
In the past 10 years, factory trawlers like the Aleutian Enterprise have taken over the fishing industry, an industry with virtually no government safety regulations.
It was senseless for my husband to lose his life and the other boys. The alarm wasn't working. Now, they hadn't been working for a long time. Every trip when they came in, they would submit the worksheet to the agent there in Dutch Harbor. They'd unload their fish, and he'd tell them, go out, we'll fix it next time.
Well, I'm not an electrician or nothing. I don't think it would cost very much to have it fixed. But yet they didn't fix it. And it cost, I personally feel it cost everyone that slept through this thing, it cost them their lives.
My husband and those boys went to bed with no danger in front of them at all. And then all of a sudden, they're gone. He was my soulmate. Part of me will always be gone. Every day you just exist. You're there because you have to be for your children, your grandchildren. But it's just, everything's dimmer.
Once a year, Seattle fishermen and their families gather to honor their dead.
Life's tempestuous sea, unknown waves before me roll, hiding rock and treacherous shore, chart and compass come from thee, Jesus Savior, pilot me.
Construction workers are a dime a dozen. Now let's face it, they're a dime a dozen. I've been on jobs where you make one false move, you're gone. But there are 10 people standing there to take your place. They know that. The company knows that. It's just the general attitude of management. We've been doing it this way for years. It's okay. If you don't want to do it, we'll get somebody else to do it. You're put in a situation whereby you can walk away from the job, or you try to stay and make a living.
Dabney worked as a tunneler, one of the most dangerous of all construction jobs. He was injured in Chicago while working on a job run by the S.A. Healy Company.
From the first day I went there was never a safety meeting. On Monday mornings, they would pass around a piece of paper that they called a toolbox report and told you to sign it. It was a blank piece of paper that was supposed to be our safety sheet. I had complained about the fact that there was no guard on that conveyor numerous times. I got my wrench and I was in the process of adjusting the belt or getting in position to adjust it, and I slipped. And the wrench was in my left hand, and I was right by the tail pulley of the conveyor belt. The wrench was caught in the pulley, and it just pulled me right in and pulled my arm off. As a result of that accident, my neck was broken in several places, and my head was split open. I have a son that's 8 years old. And because of my neck injury and the loss of my arm, I can't play with him. I can't wrestle with him. I can't play ball with him. So these are the things that I have lost. How can I take my kid fishing? I can't bait a hook, or I can't reel it in. So these are the things that as a result of the accident that I'll miss tremendously. I haven't given my wife a good hug in 10 years.
In 1988, the S.A. Healy Company was running another deep tunnel project. This one was 90 miles away, in Milwaukee.
From day one, the job was having problems with the electrical setup and the ventilation system. We talked to one of the fellows that did electrical work for Healy, and he said, "Rick should not be going down there." That was his exact words. And he says, it's not a good place to work. They're taking all kind of shortcuts. And he says, the electrical system is just wide open. It's just a bomb waiting to explode.
Early in the job, S.A. Healy was warned by the city to be on the lookout for deadly methane gas. On November 10th, they encountered it.
Explosion in the tunnel. Yes, we had methane explosion.
Activate the tunnel team. Yes, sir. 10-4.
The deep tunnel team has been activated. People are in the tunnel.
I have a confirmed explosion with 3 persons trapped. I want you to prepare your meters. We're going to have to go down in.
I got a call from my wife. It's about noontime. She said there was an accident in Milwaukee and there was an explosion, and Rick was down in the tunnel at the time. And I asked her, did they get out? She says, as far as she knows, they're still down there. It doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to figure out when they're down there that long, out in the air. We know it's pretty serious. First, you're scared and upset, and you pray a lot, hoping things will work out. You're always looking for that miracle. But as the day progressed, it got a lot tougher. We saw the body bags come up. And from general knowledge, our son was the last one brought up. And it just tore us apart. But we just held on together as a family. Kind of clung to each other, that's all.
I did not think Rick had died in that tunnel. I thought Rick was going to walk out of there. He was in this special little pocket that God had him in this little pocket. Because you hear miracles happening, you know. People have, come up to you at the funeral and say, oh, time heals. Well, maybe it does. I don't know, but it hasn't yet so far. I just miss him so much.
In the old days, the coal miners took canaries inlet. And when there was too much methane, the canary would die, and then the guys they would know to get out of that area. So what the S.A. Healy Company used for canaries is their workers.
Phil lost his oldest son, Tony, in the accident.
As we pulled up to the job site, we heard on the radio that the 3 men were killed. And at that point, I knew that, Tony was dead. So then, waiting.
We're not supposed to bury our children. They're supposed to bury us. And S.A. Healy buried my son. I know exactly what happened. They turned on some equipment that was not explosion-proof. And the methane that was in this 150-foot conveyor, this bomb, a massive bomb, exploded and killed them.
Investigators found the electricity in the tunnel should have been turned off. The company wasn't using spark-proof equipment, and the workers were improperly trained to deal with the methane gas Healy was warned it would encounter.
You shouldn't go to work and be killed. Accidents happen, but this was blatant disregard.
Every day, that thought is there, Tony, why do they have to kill him? Why would he be one of the people that the S.A. Healy Company murdered?
Production. Footage. They want the footage. At any cost.
One of the men still in the tunnel was Ron's cousin, Tony.
I had another cousin working there, Joe Krudzik, and I managed to get to him, and he had told me that they had a methane explosion, and that there was no official word yet, but that it didn't look good for anybody.
I just started praying right away, and I really felt like no way they wouldn't live, but I was just praying and wishing and thinking, oh, maybe they're okay. What happened about 9 in the morning, and we didn't locate the bodies till like 4:30 at night. That was a long day. It seemed like 5 days. Seeing my cousin before he was put in the body bag, that's something that's gonna stick in. I wish I would have never saw, but I did. We were the little moles to dig their hole, and they didn't place a human value on us.
And that's a pretty rude awakening right there. When it happens, to someone so young.
Because I'm a professional prosecutor and I've been at it for 25 years and I don't emote very easily. But I can tell you every time I picked up this file and went through it, I thought of these men. You can't help but see the tragedy involved in this type of death.
Milwaukee DA Mike McCann, a former construction worker himself, investigated the explosion for the state.
On November 7th, 1988, 3 days before the explosion, they encountered a sufficient amount of gas that cut off their equipment. The tunnel walker, the man in charge underground, in his own notebook, his diary indicated that they had encountered 22 to 26% methane gas. So there was no question on November 10th, 1988, the S.A. Healy Company knew of the presence of methane gas 3 days earlier in the tunnel and of the ongoing danger of methane gas.
They should have shut the job down, right then and there.
This accident could have been prevented by a methane monitor. Its wires go to the office on the surface, and it shows you the percent of methane you have in your tunnel atmosphere. However, S.A. Healy decided they didn't want to put that in there.
Had the company spent that $14,000 for the underground monitoring, had they added the automatic cutoff, there is a good probability that those men would not have died.
Mike McCann gathered enough evidence to take S.A. Healy to court, where they were found guilty of 2 counts of reckless homicide. Although the company was fined, no one went to jail.
They have no regard for the American worker, none whatsoever, and they get away with it. They got away with it here. I don't see nobody from Healy in jail. I don't see Healy going to the cemetery and visiting their sons or friends or anything like we have to do.
They make their money. If we lose a few lives, hey, we made our money. We'll go on to the next job.
600,000 workers are injured every year on America's construction sites. 2,100 lose their lives. To stop this, and to bring companies who criminally endanger the lives of their employees to justice, Congress founded OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
The OSHA Act was adopted in 1970, so it's been in effect for over 21 years. During that time, somewhere between 7,000 to 10,000 or more workers have died on the job annually. So you're talking about well in excess of 100,000 deaths. There have been 74 referrals for criminal prosecution to the Department of Justice, and some 30 to 40 of those resulted in convictions, and only one person in 20 years has spent any time in jail under the OSHA Act.
You hear OSHA's coming probably a month before they show up. You get the warning. A week before, they have you start moving your oxygen bottles, get them out of the way, putting handrails up, getting things ready for OSHA when they show up. It's never OSHA is here right now. It's OSHA will be here in a week. We want this, this, and this squared away. And after OSHA leaves, you never hear nothing else about it. If that handrail comes down, if there's an oxygen bottle laying, it lays.
I've worked for the company for 3 years and I've never seen OSHA ever.
In 5 years, I never did see an inspector.
I've been working in and out of petrochemicals plants since I was 18 years old, and I've never seen a man from OSHA. I've never met a man from OSHA.
Houston, Texas, the petrochemical capital of the United States. Around the ship channel, outside of town, 100 plants sit side by side. This is Chemical Alley, and lately, it's become an alley of danger, injury, and death. In the past 2 years, 500 people have been injured. Over 50 others have lost their lives.
We have an emergency. Evacuate these people. This stuff is strong down here, and we've got to get them out of here. But not to get overcome by this stuff. When they start feeling the effect of it, to leave. It's pretty strong down here.
All right, take your children, relax, evacuate here. You back up on the highway, evacuate at this time. Back up, okay, go get your family, take them to the Nestor Center. It's already come from the other end of Marathon down here. Just as far as they're going. They're going to evacuate the whole area. Tell them, turn your air conditioners off, close your windows, put your animals in the house.
I want all available Galveston County EMS on the scene. Notify Danforth Hospital to
to respond to disaster nursing team. 10-4, sir.
In October of 1987, workers at the Marathon plant in Texas City, under rush orders from the company to finish a job, dropped a piece of heavy equipment from a crane. It fell onto a tank containing thousands of gallons of deadly hydrofluoric acid.
They made an improper lift in violation of every known safety lifting procedure. The load shifted, they dropped the load, it knocked a vent line off of a HF acid tank. The release sent 1,000 people to the hospital. 3,000 people were evacuated.
Yeah, have you smelled this stuff? 13th Street and Texas Avenue is real strong. You can see it visually. It's still strong enough over here, it'll gag you.
The Marathon plant was in what is called a turnaround procedure. What that basically means is that the entire plant has been shut down so that the whole plant can be reworked, so that the maintenance people can come in and fix everything, repair everything, bring everything back up to the standards that it needs to be at to operate. What that means in terms of Marathon and Marathon's mentality at that point in time is that the entire plant is not working. When it's not working, that means there is no productivity. When there is no productivity, that means there are no profits.
If you smell this stuff, definitely get out of the way of it. Headquarters, if you activated emergency siren 755, don't drive through that stuff.
Hospital office, man. We've got a police emergency.
Marathon had made the conscious decision to disengage the safety systems that normally go along with this storage tank. So Marathon knew from the get-go that if an emergency situation occurred, that this acid was going to be vented to the atmosphere, and that if the wind was blowing towards Texas City, then the people of Texas City were going to be exposed to this acid.
To put your animals in the house, close your windows, do not have your air conditioner running, go to the Nestor Center.
What you're dealing with is an acid that is extremely caustic, not only to materials like glass, but obviously to human materials, like flesh, like eyes, like lungs.
Get 2 or 3 officers up in that area. Roll their windows down, see if they can detect any of it. I'm down here in it, but it's burning my nose pretty bad.
Here we are, standing out there with this mist and this cloud coming down on us, which was acid burning us. I was getting scared for my own health, you know, thinking that here I am in this stuff. I'm burning, I'm itching, my eyes, I can't hardly see, you know. If it's doing this to me, what's it going to be doing to everybody around us?
I have 2 sons, and I don't know what to tell them. I look at my 14-year-old who is at the point who really needs me, and I'm fearful for him because I don't know to tell him, hey, your daddy will be here tomorrow, or your daddy won't be here tomorrow.
Everybody's asking us, well, what is it? What is it? Is it going to hurt me? Well, we didn't know. And I don't think half the people in the city, in the area, know what's out there in those plants.
It missed the liquid leg on the tank by 18 inches. If it had struck the liquid leg and had a release of gas instead of vapor, they would have been a bhopal. Casualties would have just been tremendous.
This is the first time where a release of HF acid in this magnitude has occurred in a heavily populated area. All the trees, the bushes, and the greenery in the area where the acid blew has now turned brown. Nobody knows exactly what the future holds for all these people. They're guinea pigs. I wonder, when is the next disaster going to happen? Where is it going to happen? And how big a disaster is the next one going to be?
I guess it was in 82 or 83. That's when everything changed at Phillips. They started offering all these early retirements and retiring off all the old guys, all the people who knew a lot of stuff. And where when I had first gone to work out there, we had like 12 chemists in the lab, and now we were down to like 3. And the 3 of us were trying to do the work that 12 of us had done.
Carol met her husband, Bert, at the Phillips plant where they both worked.
It was always a little bit of a thrill to me when I would be out in the plant and I would see him unexpectedly and he wouldn't know that I had seen him. He was a very handsome man. And he would have his tools, you know, all on his hip and everything, and his hard hat and his glasses. And I always liked doing that. I liked seeing him like that.
In August of 1989, an explosion at the plant killed 2 workers and injured several others. Although it made them nervous, Carol and Bert decided it was a bad time to leave Phillips.
We had just, about a week or two earlier, signed the contract to buy this house. We were having this house built, and so we both needed an income to pay for this house, and it was something that we both wanted really bad. So, you know, I had to keep a job.
See, this is where our new house is going to be right here.
We think that is 4227 Armand View, right there where it says sold. And right
Lot 29. What's lot 29?
Ours is lot 30.
Here it is right here, lot 30.
Right at the front door. Right at the front door, Lauren and Lindsay. Hands in the pockets.
This word just in, we have a report of a huge explosion apparently at the Phillips refinery on the ship channel.
It is an incredible fire.
As many as 100 remain trapped inside a plant building.
Carol was across town on a United Way fund drive when she got the news.
I'll never forget, we were walking down this hall and this lady came up to us, a little lady that worked there, and she came up to us and she said, "Are y'all the people from Phillips?" And we said, "Yeah, we are." And she said, "Well, your plant blew up." And they turned on a radio and they said that it was in the Plant 5 area. I knew that was my husband's area. It was real unlike me because everyone was crowded up trying to hear, and I just started backing away and backing away. And I just backed up till I backed right into somebody's office, up to the wall, and I just sat down in this chair and I just started to cry. I could see the big cloud of smoke coming up from Pasadena. We were about 30 miles away, and we could see it from there. As we were riding, I just kept sitting there, you know, just watching that smoke and watching that smoke. It's a 30-minute drive, but it seemed like it was 3 days.
The ethylene fire continues to burn out of control.
It looks as if a good part of the refinery structure has blown away.
I would see people. I was glad they were alive and they were okay, and I would run up and I would hug them. But then I would say, "Have you seen Bert?" I was glad to see him, and yet the most important person I wanted to see, I didn't see. Well, these busloads of people would come up. I would just stand there and look at all their faces. I just wanted it to come out so bad. I kept thinking about that plant and all the times I'd walk through there, and I tried to imagine where would be a safe place, and I knew there wasn't one. There wasn't one.
When it ignited, I heard just a whoosh sound. It sounded like the air being taken away. And then I heard a crack. It was the strangest noise, just like a crack, almost like a sonic boom. And I didn't feel the concussion right then, and I looked and I saw it blowing up. And that's when I turned and started running, and the shockwave hit me. The last thing I can remember was my hard hat going out of sight, and I started going forward. After I'd been blown forward approximately 150 foot, first thing I did when I stood up was just touch myself. And I said, "I'm all here." I couldn't believe it. It felt like someone had grabbed the back of my head and just pulled my skin off the top of my head. It had such a force to it.
After working in this area for 8 years, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that this area had been totally destroyed like it was. It looked like a war zone. It was tough walking in there. It was very emotional because there was approximately 20 bodies still inside there. I was in there to help work on the investigation of the explosion on behalf of the union, and I was afraid to look. I was afraid of what I was going to see.
Rescue workers sifted through the rubble for weeks. One of the people they were looking for was Bert Arce.
After 3 weeks, they told me that they had identified him, that he was dead. There wasn't any doubt. He had a lot of dental work done, and they said that they had a half of his jawbone, and that the teeth were a perfect match with his dental records. After church, I brought them into the living room. They were sitting there looking at me, all curious, "What's Mom? What's going on?" I started trying to explain to them how there was a big accident where Daddy worked. And I knew where Daddy worked. I could relate to that. And there was a big accident, there was a big fire, and that their daddy hadn't come home, so that I was pretty sure that he had been killed. I was expecting him to ask all these questions. They just looked at me like I was crazy. And I started trying to explain to him how that you have an outside person and an inside person, and how the daddy's inside person would keep living, but then his outside person wouldn't get to be with us anymore.
Bert was one of 23 people who died that day at Phillips. Investigators discovered the accident was caused by outside contract workers brought in by the company to clear a clogged reactor line. They opened a valve on the reactor, not knowing the deadly consequences.
Where the valve opened, the liquid come rushing out under 600 pounds of pressure, a little over 218, 220 degrees, and hit the atmospheric pressure. And temperature, well, it immediately went to a tremendous vapor cloud, and it exploded, tremendous explosion. It registered 3.5 to 4.0 on a Richter scale. The debris was found up as far as 5 miles away from the plant. It's just a tremendous, tremendous crime, the fact that this could have been avoided. This job was refused by Phillips employees on Thursday. They was told to come down and do the same thing. They said, no, it's unsafe. The valve is leaking through, hydrocarbons in the atmosphere. We're not going to work on it. So they go back. They bring in contractors. They're cheaper. They do not ask questions. They do what they're told. They'd been working on this particular job the whole weekend around the clock. They were tired. They were frustrated. So to speed the job up, to make it simpler for them, they bypassed some of the safety features.
I have nothing against those men. I've worked as a contractor all my life until I worked here and was lucky enough to get this job at the time. But until the practice is stopped, more people are going to die.
Phillips was cited for 566 willful safety violations. A congressional hearing also called into question the industry-wide practice of using inexperienced and untrained contract workers to cut costs.
People tell me there's incidents every day. Of course, everyone's scared now. I think after that, how could people go back out there? But they're just like I was in August. They have to earn a living.
On July 5th, 1990, 9 months after the Phillips blast, there was another explosion. This one was at the Arco chemical plant, 6 miles down the road.
Everybody had their timesheets filled out and was fixed to come home. And they went back down to see if they could help out. And they drove up probably about 2 minutes before the explosion, got out of the truck, walked over to the area, and that's when it blew up. And nobody in the whole area, nobody got out. Everybody that was there was killed. I lost a friend, and just like a family member.
Billy Ray had asked his best friend Richard to fill in for him at Arco on the day of the explosion.
This time they pushed a little too far. They lost money, but we lost lives. So you can't believe it, you know. What the hell can go wrong that can actually do that much?
The morning after the accident, Billy Ray and a buddy went to Arco to find out what happened to their friend Richard. They took along a tape recorder so that they would remember what they saw.
They never stood a chance. It leveled the whole motherfucking thing. Where are their bodies? So I told him it was a time bomb. You could smell fumes there all the time. And it's been that way. Why don't Arco do something about it? Where were they? Where were they?
In the truck here, in the truck over there.
They were in the truck?
They were in the truck.
No.
That crimping tool.
No. No. That's Richard's fucking toolbox. Oh, God. Oh, buddy. Oh, Richard, why? Oh, man. Oh, 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 no.
Another man killed that night at Arco was John Blackstock.
John had talked to his dad and told his dad he wanted to quit. Said things were getting worse out at the plant, meaning they were hiring less people to do more work. In other words, John had more jobs put on him rather than they hired more people. And he was very seriously thinking about quitting.
And in fact, I feel pretty guilty because I didn't let him go ahead and quit. I could have took him under my wing in construction and went right on, but I told him that he ought to stay there because that's where the money was at.
And after the Phillips explosion, we kind of realized how close to home that was and that something could happen any day. And when John started telling us some of the things that were going wrong at the plant and that the higher-up people wouldn't listen to their problems, I started worrying about him being there.
And I worry about all the friends that I have that work in the plants. And I worry about all my neighbors who have husbands that are working out in the plants and my friends who have husbands that are working in the plants. Because you never know from one day to the next what's going to happen out there.
Sandra's husband, Greg, also worked at the Arco plant.
I told him how frightened I was, that something was going wrong out there, and he told me then the night we were out at the plant that not to worry about the low flares, that it was just the tall flare that I had to worry about. And that if that flare was ever lit, then I could worry. The flares only burn when the plants are having a mishap and something isn't going right.
For months before the accident, Arco had been having problems with the safety systems on a wastewater tank.
We got the phone call that the compressor was down and they wanted him out of the plant, and when I talked to Greg in the evening, he had one piece to be put on and then was supposed to be coming home. Well, then when I talked to him about 8:30 that evening when he called home again, he said they were still waiting to put their piece on, but I should just go ahead and go to sleep because he didn't know when he'd be home, because he said they couldn't leave until the compressor was running.
John Blackstock was also called into work.
And as he got into his nightly chores, his work, then he realized that he had a bad problem. And he was doing everything that he could to take care of the problem. But the thing was, they was also rushing him. No one told him that this was such a dangerous situation. I think Arco was gambling with everyone's life at that plant that night.
An explosion and fire rocking the Channelview plant of Arco, jolting people awake more than 5 miles away from the plant.
I woke up about 6:30 in the morning and Greg wasn't home. That was my first concern. At first I was just really mad. I wanted to know why somebody was keeping my husband 24 hours at work and he wasn't home yet. And I tried to call out to the shop to the maintenance shop, and there was no answer at the shop, and I called a couple times. Nobody answered, so finally I woke my son up, and I said, "Come on, Scott, we're going out to the plant to get Daddy." When I turned the corner down a ways from here, the flare was lit. The tall flare was burning, and my heart just kind of sunk.
The blast and blaze apparently took place in a water treatment facility. There are fatalities.
We just assumed that maybe John was in the plant somewhere and couldn't be accounted for, that he was helping fighting the fire, because he had done this several times. When they had a small problem out there, then he would call me later and say, "Mom, I'm okay and everything's all right." But John never did call us that night. And we didn't know anything for hours and hours. We just sit here waiting for a call, and we never got one.
I called my in-laws, Greg's parents, and I told them that there had been an explosion at the plant and that Greg was missing.
17 men were killed that night. In the investigations that followed, it was discovered that 2 crucial gauges, which would have warned the workers of the impending explosion, hadn't been working for weeks. One was broken, and the other turned off.
People had made comments that that tank had been rumbling. They could feel it, actually see the walls of the tank starting to bulge. I'm not sure Greg knew any of that, because I think if he had known that, he would have been out of there.
They're just in a hurry to get it online, no matter what routes they have to skip to get it going. They're just thinking of how much money they're losing by that part of the plant not being in production at the time.
The year before, Phillips had the 2 explosions that killed 25, 2 in August, 23 in October. Here's another 17 men less than a year later, so that's 42 people died in chemical plants less than 10 miles apart. And it was all due to the rush. You know, we got to get back online. We got to get these units going.
God, I hope this doesn't happen to anyone else's son. It's hard to explain until you've actually had a part of you gone. This is a part of John's dad and I that will never be replaced.
The hardest part is every day wondering how I'm going to raise my son to love his daddy that's not here. I can't express how hard it is to have your son sit on your lap and read a book when it talks about daddy and him look up to a picture and say daddy. There's just no way to express that, and it's not money that can make it any better. The love of friends helps, but it's the fact that he's gone, and that I have to live with that fact every single day. Why did my husband have to die? Why did my little girls have to grow up without a dad? You know, I think he died earning a living, which is honorable. But nobody ought to have to die to earn a living. Not in this country.
Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are back as that odd-coupled cop team. And with their new sidekick, Joe Pesci, they can't lose. Lethal Weapon 2, next.
Wait.
What a cat violin song.
By play.
She is gone!
Thrill.
Why doesn't he go?
By thrill.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Memory.
Believe in miracles! Yes!
By memory.
The greatest moments in sports, relived by the greatest broadcasters in television, only on HBO. It's an unprecedented look inside the innovations, the programs, the personalities that have brought us 50 years of sports television. told with rare footage and memorable stories that brings the cheers and the tears to life.
Look at that!
Jim McKay, Pat Summerall, Brent Musburger, Bob Costas, Jim Lampley, Kurt Gowdy, and many more. Brought together for the first time, television and years in the making. Play, a history of sports television. A two-part special premiering Tuesday, December 3rd on HBO.
It could only happen here.
On the next Inside the NFL, his teams can't seem to beat the Broncos. What's behind the Schottenheimer jinx? The Redskins, can anyone stop their perfect season? See it all from the inside on HBO's Inside the NFL. On Cover Story, a rare insight of an athlete coping with injury. Now Rodney Peete can only watch as his team struggles. Where Are They Now visits Paul Hornung, once known as a playboy, now a changed man. See it all from the inside on HBO's Inside the NFL. Tomorrow on HBO.
The champ is back.
Excuse me, my husband is retired.
But he's losing it all.
You suffered some damage to the brain.
The effects are irreversible.
He thought it was over.
Rocky, you're losing your family. You lied to me and you lied to Mom.
But there's one more chance.
You got insulted.
One more round.
You got a dog.
One more shot.
You gotta do whatever you got to do to get him into that ring.
Man, I'll fight anybody, anywhere.
And he's gonna go for it. Talia Shire, Sylvester Stallone, Rocky V. Tomorrow on HBO.
On the premiere episode of Sessions, is Dan's sex life really dead?
I've had patients who haven't been able to have sex in 10 years.
Oh, that's encouraging. Maybe he just needs a new partner.
How about we do this face to face?
Sure, but I need a glass of water first.
Are you saying that I want to sleep with my mother?
How long will it be before things start looking up? Dan's working things out in Sessions, a painfully funny new series. Tomorrow on HBO.
A man on top of the world. His seductive mistress.
Don't you want a little poontang?
A reporter hungry for a story. All brought together by accident.
We're investigating an automobile accident.
There's a story in it for somebody, Peter.
We got a problem.
What is it?
They're gonna arrest you.
If the truth won't set you free, then lie.
The Bonfire of the Vanities. Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, Melanie Griffith. Premieres Saturday on HBO.
Who are you?
I'm Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. I was banished from the planet Zeiss 500 years ago. And I cannot die.
He can't die, that is, unless he's decapitated. The year is 2024, and the Highlander, played by French actor Christopher Lambert, is once again trying to save the world, which is in danger this time by the very atmospheric shield he implemented to save the planet in the original Highlander movie. A plot reversal, perhaps, but, says Lambert, that was the intention of director Russell Mulcahy to make a sequel that is quite different from the original.
You know, generally when you make a sequel, you copy the first movie. So come out of the second, you have seen it. It's the same as the first one. And Russell wanted to avoid that. People might be disappointed by number 2, but they can't say that it's not a different movie.
Don't worry, we're gonna be okay.
Easy for you to say, you don't have to worry about getting killed. The original Highlander, released in 1985, was not a box office success, but became a cult film on the home video market. It also starred Christopher Lambert, an actor who rose to stardom after his appearance in Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan. He is now one of France's top actors.
It sounds like magic.
Oh, it is. Kind of. But we are joined in a way that can never be broken. Not even by death. When you need me, you'll only have to call my name. Greetings, Highlander. You called?
The original Highlander and the sequel also star Scottish actor Sean Connery. He returns as Ramirez, the mentor and teacher to the Highlander.
The ancient power of the quickening has joined us. We are now as one.
Highlander 2, The Quickening, is like the original in at least one way. It is pure science fiction fantasy, just the kind of film Lambert loves to make.
That's what I like about movies. You know, they make me dream. I'm in a fantasy world. And it's not that I want to avoid the real world, but when I'm making a movie, that's what I want.
In fact, Lambert becomes so much a part of his fantasy movie world that he insists on performing most of the stunt scenes, including the sword fighting sequences, and says that quite often he gets injured as a result.
We rehearsed, as I told you, a long time, but even though, when you're in the middle of it, it gets messy at one point. And then you get a big cut or whatever, and that's the way it is. It's part of the job, so you just accept it. Now in life, my job is not to get cut. The elevator, free-falling elevator, I'm not going to do that in life. I'm not crazy. But in the movie, it's fine.
The enormous, surreal set in Highlander 2 was built near Buenos Aires, Argentina.
We had such a big set to build. We couldn't have built this city in any studio. We needed an open space. It's true, we could have gone somewhere. We couldn't find it in Los Angeles, couldn't find it in London. And that was primarily the reason.
The other reason was to save money. But, says Lambert, with the constantly fluctuating Argentinian currency, it wasn't really a saving after all.
Go to sleep on a Monday and you wake up on a Tuesday, you've lost $2 million. But really, literally, it's like, put it in the fire. So, but that you can't know before, so it's impossible to say, well, we're not going to shoot anymore in Argentina. No, it's a great country.
Both the Highlander films have environmental themes. The world is dying because of damage to the ozone layer. But Lambert doesn't think this movie message precludes the film's primary goal, to simply entertain.
It's not a pretentious movie. It's not an intellectual movie. That doesn't mean intellectuals are not going to enjoy it. I think it's just an entertaining movie, and that's what movies should be.
Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are back as that odd-coupled cop team. And with their new sidekick, Joe Pesci, they can't lose. Lethal Weapon 2, next.
Jamaican gangs known as posses are now dominating the American drug trade. Who's that?
John Hatcher, DEA.
Steven Seagal is marked for death.
Your family has been marked.
And primed for action.
I'm gonna take out the posse. Who you fear? One thought he was invincible. Him. The other thought he could fly. They were both wrong.
Steven Seagal, marked for death. Friday on HBO.
From the mind of Stephen King.
Good morning, boys and girls.
There's something wrong.
God, this is bad. Extreme safety hazard.
Gravely wrong.
Tracking rats through walls, concrete.
Down under the mill.
I'm gonna see you down in the basement.
Where terror lurks.
You're not thinking about going down in there.
At every turn, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift premieres Sunday on HBO.
When's the last time you've been to a graveyard?
It can see anger.
You don't know what you're dealing with.
It feeds on hate.
Whoever killed him is gonna pay.
It's come to the right place.
He's on safari.
But it's messed with the wrong guy.
I'm gonna finish him.
Danny Glover.
Now it's personal.
Predator 2. Premieres Sunday, December 1st on HBO.
The Senate Committee for Upholding Decency on Television interrupts this HBO programming to bring you a warning. This is not a test. This is an actual warning. On December 6th, Home Box Office will attempt to air the new season premiere of The Kids in the Hall. With the support of moral and politically correct viewers like you, we could get a congressional order to cease and desist televising this alleged comedy series. Thank you for your cooperation.
Oh, my God!
We now return you to the decent and regularly scheduled HBO programming.
Boxing means champions. Boxing means tradition. Boxing means HBO. Evander Holyfield, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. The challenger, Smokin' Burt Cooper. World Championship Boxing, as it can only be seen live on HBO. And next month, the man who took the champ the distance, George Foreman, battles Jimmy Ellis. Holyfield Cooper, Saturday night at 10:10 on HBO.